ಅಲ್ಲ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ಔಟ್ ರೂಮ್
Rohit?
Yes, sir. We can start, sir. Purnashri, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you. To begin with, I would like to quote Kofi Annan, who has served as the 7th Secretary General of the United Nations. The United Nations, whose membership comprises almost all the states in the world, is founded on the principle of equal worth of every human being. A very warm good evening to one and all present. I would like to extend a heartfelt welcome to all the distinguished dignitaries, esteemed guests, professors, delegates, students, research scholars, and others present virtually with us. I, Purnashri, Secretary General for Communications of University Law College Model United Nations Conference 2021, consider it my proud privilege to be the Master of Ceremony for this inaugural ceremony of Model United Nations Conference. University Law College would like to provide a platform for deliberation as we strongly propagate education through experience. Hence, we believe that an opportunity to host a Model United Nations Conference would expand the learning horizons of the students. It would be pivotal for the students to understand the nuances and intricacies of international law and the functioning of United Nations organization and develop a better understanding of the global community. As a testament to our dedication towards shaping the global future, the previous edition of University Law College Model United Nations Conference 2020 was a grand success with thought-provoking committees and agendas and renowned speakers. University Law College, under the noble leadership of Professor Dr. K.R. Venugopal sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Bangalore University, and under the guidance of Professor Dr. Suresh V. Nadagowda sir, Principal and Chairman, University Law College has also conducted several other workshops and online lectures till date for our benefit. I now invite Namrata Sharma, student of University Law College, to invoke the blessings of the divine with an invocation song.
मुदाकरार्थमोदकं सदा विमुक्तिसाधकं कलाधरावतं सकं विलासि लोकरक्षकम् अनायकैकनायकं विनाशिते वदैत्यकं नताशुभाशुनाशकं नमामि तं विनायकम् न ते तरार्तिभीकरं नवोदितार्कभास्करं नमः सुरारिनिर्जरं नताधिकापदुद्धरं सुरेश्वरं निधीश्वरं गजेश्वरं गणेश्वरं महेश्वरं तमाश्रये परात्परं निरन्तरम् समस्तलोकशङ्करं निरस्तदैत्यकुञ्जरं दरे दरोदरं वरं वरे भवक्षमक्षरं कृपाकरं क्षमाकरं मुदाकरं यशस्करं मनस्करं नमस्कृतां नमस्करोमि भास्करम्.
Thank you very much, Namrata, for this beautiful rendition. On an emotional level, Model United Nations Conference is a motivating experience. Model United Nations Conference activates student imagination and creativity. In this era of globalization, learning about the world is more important than ever. No matter what field or profession students enter, they will interact with people from different countries and diverse backgrounds. Problems taking place halfway around the globe impact our lives, our country, and our community. I now invite Professor Dr. Suresh V. Nadagowda sir, Principal and Chairman, University Law College, and the Director of this conference to deliver the welcome address. Sir, I request you to kindly address the gathering.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Namaste and good evening to all. Respected Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Sri Anirudh Rajput, Member UN International Law Commission, Sri Punit, my dear friend and Associate Professor, Jawaharlal Nehru University, our esteemed faculty members, Professor V. Sudesh, Professor Dashrath, Dr. N. Satish Koda, Dr. Chandrakanti, Dr. Jyoti Vishwanath, and President and members of the Alumni Association, and invitees, dignitaries, and dear students. Indeed, we are very happy and privileged to organize this program, that is second edition of our United Nations conference, Model United Nations Conference. And on this occasion, we are very happy to have our Honorable Vice Chancellor, who has kindly consented to preside over the program. Our Honorable Vice Chancellor is a well-known academician in the country and a very eminent administrator who has authored more than 700 articles and more than 70 books, and also has many patents to his credit. And we are really fortunate at the University Law College and Department of Studies in Law. Honorable Vice Chancellor has extended all his support, and whenever we request, he will be always helping us and encouraging us. Thank you very much, sir, for gracing this occasion, and I extend you a very warm welcome on behalf of all the faculty
Namaste.
and students.
Thank you to one and all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. We have another esteemed guest, Sri Anirudh Rajputji, a very young and dynamic person. He is a member of UN International Law Commission and also consultant public international law and international arbitration, London. And in fact, Anirudhji has been kind enough to even address our students early on an earlier occasion. And now also he has been kind enough to accept our invitation and be present despite his busy schedule. So thank you very much, Anirudhji, and I extend you a very warm welcome on behalf of our faculty and students to this program. We have our esteemed professors, Dr. V. Sudesh, former principal and dean, Professor N. Dashrath, Dean Faculty of Law, Dr. N. Satish Koda, Dr. Jyoti Vishwanath, Dr. Chandrakanti, all associate professors, and many distinguished invitees and guests, the president and members of the Alumni Association, and members of the Academic Council, Syndicate, and all authorities of the university. And I extend them all a very warm welcome to this program. So I also extend a warm welcome to all the participants who have been participating in this prestigious event of University Law College from across the world. I extend them a very warm welcome to this program. I also welcome all our dear students of LLB, LLM, and research scholars, and the organizers have taken really a lot of trouble in organizing and coordinating this program. I congratulate them for their effective organization, and I also welcome all of them to this program. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I now invite Ms. Hitake, the Secretary General of University Law College, Model United Nations, to introduce the University Law College Model United Nations Conference 2021. I request you to kindly address the gathering, Hita.
Thank you so much.
I am sorry, I have forgotten to welcome Mr. Punit. In fact, Dr. Punit is our own alumni. He has been kind enough to coordinate and get Mr. Anirudh Rajput for this program. Thank you, dear Punit, for all your support and help to ULC. Thank you very much. Okay, you can go ahead now.
Thank you, sir. So, honorable dignitaries, honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, principal, faculty members of the University Law College, executive board members, delegates, fellow members of the Secretariat. I, Hitake, consider it my privilege to address every person present in this August virtual gathering this evening. After an immensely successful maiden edition, We are proud to present to you the second edition of the University Law College Model United Nations 2021. With an intensive research into various aspects of the global society, vastly covering subjects of polity, economics, climate action, among various other subjects, we, the Secretariat, considered it our pleasure to present to you the committees of this year's edition. So the first committee, United Nations General Assembly, Disarmament and International Security, the agenda of which being deliberating the role of private military and security organizations with a special reference to their autonomy. This committee is being chaired by Chinmaya Prasanna, who is an immensely seasoned manner and also believes that the flavor of debate lies beyond its competitive spirit. With him is co-chairperson Sumukh D. Ram, who is well known for his tremendous ability to craft impeccable speeches and arguments. Thank you for being a part of this conference. The next committee, UNEP, the United Nations Environment Assembly, with the agenda of being deliberating the impact of deep sea trawling and the commercialization of marine life, with special emphasis on global corruption. It is being co-chaired by Ishwar Chava, who has a commendable flair on international law and foreign policy, and Alden D'Souza, who tactfully wields the power of words. It is our pleasure to have you at this conference. Thank you. Our next committee, the All India Political Parties, the agenda of which is being deliberating the requirement of refugee law in India in the light of recent developments in the subcontinent. This committee is being co-chaired by Ritwik Ganesh, who is not only an avid manner, but has trained several international student MUN delegations over the years, and Sohan Kumar, who believes that deliberating upon national relevance and international issues will build the youth of the country. We are glad to have you as the executive board members. Thank you. Our final committee, the International Press, is being led by the head of International Press, Anusha Mascarenas, who is a perfectionist and multitasking, with the nature of which makes her a perfect fitting person for this role. With her is Anurag Dubashyam, the editor-in-chief, who firmly believes that the discourse of an issue is the only way to solve it. Thank you for being a part of this conference. सरफरोजी की तमन्ना अब हमारे दिल में है, देखना है रोज जोर कितना बाजुए कातिल में है. We breathe, we inhale every step we take free from oppression in the sweet motherland of ours is owed to the countless soldiers and freedom fighters who have fought for our country. Celebrating 75 years of glorious Indian independence, we, the University Law College, are proud to unveil a platform for deliberation, discussion, and debate for upholding the true spirit of Indian democracy. The India at 75 dialogue is one such platform. This platform is where a participant can voice out their thoughts on various phases of India as a country, which includes its rich culture, its heritage, its history, economy, law, education, among varied other agendas. The exclusivity of this platform lies in the multi-geographical and multilingual nature, thus leaving no stone unturned when it comes to spreading the light of education. This immense platform is being led by the moderators Anaha Anjali Anilesh and Rahul Simha N. The editor of the MUN, this edition of the MUN has received massive support from our esteemed collaborators. The ULG MUN is organized in collaboration with the UN Information Center for India and Bhutan. The Worldwide Fund for Nature India has collaborated with us. Our knowledge partners include the Eastern Book Company, the National Book Trust of India, and the media partner being Lobby. So to conclude my report, I will be quoting Shiloh, who says, "Dream and wake with a blazing heart, fire up that fever, galvanize that desire. The world is cold and waiting, and you engulf it in those flames." All the best to all the participants and delegates of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hita, for the introduction. It is now my honor to introduce our Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University, Professor Dr. K.R. Venugopal. Sir is an IEEE Fellow and ACM Distinguished Educator from USA for his outstanding contribution in the fraternity of computer science. He was the principal of University Visvesvaraya College of Engineering, UVCE, for 15 years. He has illustrious, distinguished, and brilliant academic career with 11 degrees, including 2 PhDs. He has served UVC and Bangalore University for over the last 4 decades. He received his ME degree in Computer Science Engineering from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, Bachelor of Engineering in Electronics and Communication from UVC, and has also obtained degrees in law, journalism, public relations, business finance, economics, industrial relations, and communications. He has authored and edited 72 books. His books are prescribed as textbooks and references in our country and abroad. He has published more than 1,000 papers in referred national and international conferences and journals. He has filed 56 patents and has credited with 27 patents. He has established 2 engineering colleges and 2 schools in Bangalore. He is a social worker, philanthropist, and researcher. He has been leading beacon of light and role model for teachers and students. We express immense gratitude to Sir for being a part of this event, and it is our honor and privilege to host him today. I now humbly request Sir to deliver the presidential address.
Namaste. Thank you for inviting me to this program, this Model United Nations Conference program organized by the University Law College under the leadership of Dr. Suresh Nadgowda,
Thank you.
Professor Sudesh, Professor Dashrath, Professor Chandrakanti, Professor Jyoti, and Professor Satish Gowda. I'm indeed delighted to have Aniruddha Rajput for this program. In fact, the United Nations Conference is a model conference which throws light and also gives experience to the students to know the nitty-gritty details of how a conference, how the meetings in United Nations takes place, whether it is a trusteeship council meeting or a secretariat or a secretary council is there or a general assembly, or with respect to International Court of Justice or economic and social design. We have a number of meetings will be conducted, and you know, in these meetings, there is a set model, set protocol, and it is necessary for the students to get accustomed to such type of protocols and formulations that takes place in this meeting. The students will be forming teams and they are assigned some role play. They can take on roles as diplomat, investigate international issues, debate, and develop solutions to the world problems. The conference should exactly look like how a United Nations conference is being conducted. So when this type of conference is conducted, a mock conference is conducted, you must be able to prepare the students, participate meaningfully, and it should be useful to them. In such a direction, the University Law College has been preparing students for this model conference. And I'm glad Dr. Aniruddha Rajput is going to deliver his lecture on how to conduct the Model United Nations Conference. So I thank all the faculty, and also I'm very happy Rajput is there with us. I am very happy to share the dais with you, sir, though virtually. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to address you. Namaste.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for your address. Namaste, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. It is now my proud privilege to announce our chief guest, Dr. Aniruddha Rajput. Sir is a member of UN International Law Commission 2017 to 2021. He was the chairperson of the drafting committee for the 69th session of ILC in 2017. His area of expertise are general international law, dispute resolution, boundary dispute, law of the sea, international investment law, and international trade law. He has advised governments on proceedings before the International Court of Justice, private clients on proceedings under the Alien Tort Claims Act before the US courts, and human rights and other public international law litigations in the Supreme Court of India. He has taught courses in international law at several universities and presently serves a member of the Board of Studies of the South Asian University created by the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC countries. He was a member of the study group constituted by the Law Commission of India on 2015 draft India Model BIT and a member of the 5th Haryana State Finance Commission constituted under Article 243 of the Constitution of India. His recent book, Protection of Foreign Investment in India and Investment Treaty Arbitration, was published by Kluwer International. During 2017, he was the practitioner in residence at the Berlin Potsdam Research Group International Rule of Law, Rise or Decline, based at the Humboldt University, Berlin. We are very glad to have you with us today, sir. I request you to deliver the chief guest address and declare the conference open.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Principal of the Law School, other faculty members, the head of the Alumni Association, and my very dear friend who's also an alumni of your institute, Professor Puneet, and dear students. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, and it's indeed a privilege after listening to the achievements of Professor Venugopal. I do feel quite delighted, humbled, and feel very pleased to be and honored to be in his company under his chairmanship of this event. So it's a great pleasure, and namaste to you and to everybody. I was just reading the news some time back, and today the flashing news in international media is about the recent Nobel Peace Prizes being given, in particularly to two individuals who are journalists. And there's a very precise point which is being made by a lot of analysts today. The point that they are making is that this Nobel Peace Prize is a way of recognizing the contribution of journalists to the modern international discourse. Now, this is not just a news and not just an analysis, but this tells us about a major transformation which has happened in the domain of international diplomacy over the last several decades, and we are standing almost at the watershed moment of that. For a long time, international law or international relations were considered to be vestiges of diplomats, vestiges of governments. It was only people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who were responsible for issues of international diplomacy. But today the scenario has changed. In fact, their role is getting minimized to the extent of being somebody who has to respond to several criticisms of the international community and of what is called the non-governmental organization community that we have today. So what we do see in contemporary international relations is the traditional understanding of international relations is not valid anymore, because the number of participants in international relations has massively expanded. And it is not just limited to states. That does not mean that the states are redundant. That doesn't mean the countries are redundant, because the key to this whole system is with the countries. If they decide to shut the shop down, the shop is closed. But what is important to realize is the role and influence that entities other than states are playing in the contemporary world. And that is why I think this Model United Nations is a very important, very interesting, and a very helpful exercise. Not that everybody would become an Indian Foreign Service officer and join the foreign services, But that doesn't mean that you would not have to do anything with diplomacy. That doesn't mean that this is the first and the only time you would be doing diplomacy in your life. To put it in a lighter way, I was speaking to one of my colleagues at the International Law Commission, and he told me once you get married, you get very good lessons in diplomacy. But you people are still far away from it. But we are not at that crude and day-to-day utility of diplomacy. We are at a level of diplomacy where diplomacy is useful to achieve a purpose. But before we get that's the whole objective of having an event like this. We need to understand what international relations are. What is diplomacy? What are negotiations? It's true that we are in an interconnected world. What happens in one place, what happens in a small market in Wuhan, disturbs the entire international community. It affects the international community because the way we are interconnected today. So what we can't forget or ignore, that events happening in one place have a global impact. So international relations have never been as important as they are today in the modern world. And if we want a stable world, where everybody can grow, everybody can develop, it is extremely critical that that world is stable, and that stability could be achieved and would be achieved through international diplomacy. Now, diplomacy itself is a broad thing. There are several aspects of diplomacy. The often spoken about prominent example of diplomacy is hard diplomacy, the use of force. Everybody speaks of force being used as the most manifest use of diplomacy. We have a recent example of Afghanistan, where the United States withdrew from Afghanistan, which was a case of instance of use of military force, the most crudest form of diplomacy. Use of force. But there are several forms which are expected to be used in order to avoid the use of force, because the last thing we want is states going to war with each other for issues that they might have between them. And therefore, the Charter of the United Nations says to save the succeeding generations of the scourge of wars, to avoid any future wars, therefore we need diplomacy. So diplomacy today is multifaceted, multi-pronged. It's not even between governments. As I said, there's track 2, track 3 diplomacy between civil society, other people. So we are looking towards expansion of diplomacy. And this diplomacy, and not just the levels of diplomacy, but also expansion of the kinds of diplomacy that could be exercised. India has always used its cultural diplomacy very impressively. The way in which India has been, in a sense, gliding on reputation of Mahatma Gandhi, it's an important part of that diplomacy. We are proud of that heritage. International Yoga Day is an outcome of that cultural diplomacy. The government is not involved, but the way in which Bollywood movies are seen, Bollywood songs are sung across the world, that's an example of international diplomacy. So there are different aspects of international diplomacy. You may not discuss every aspect of international diplomacy today, but you would be discussing some of the important and critical aspects of international diplomacy in what you would be doing in this exercise of the Model United Nations. While you have these several aspects of diplomacy, it's important to understand what is the goal. Why is diplomacy to be done? There was a very interesting thing which was said by former Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee once. He said, you can change your friends, but you cannot change your neighbors. The world you live in, the society you live in, can't be changed. You can stop meeting a friend, but you can't stop meeting a neighbor. Even if the neighbor plays loud music, you have to find ways of diplomacy to make sure and persuade that your friend doesn't make too much, that your neighbor doesn't make too much noise. So in this kind of a world, diplomacy is a tool to make sure that the world moves on without colliding. That's the use of force. So trying to make efforts, creating environments, that's one thing. And then having a language which helps you to have that conversation is what is the role of diplomacy, international diplomacy. And if there's anything that you may win prize, you may not win prize, losing prizes is really a matter of destiny apart from hard work. But what is critical is what you take home from what you do in this model United Nations. And I think that's what you should focus on and enjoy the process. And when we say what to do, what to seek out of the process, few things are important. I think few takeaways are critically important. First is, we are not going to discuss, and rather you would not be discussing all aspects of diplomacy. You are going to focus on one aspect of diplomacy, which is negotiations. Negotiations is speaking, is discussing differences, getting the differences resolved. I remember when I was growing up in India as a child, we used to often get into debates and start fighting with each other. Because we have a long tradition of debate in India and we get quite animated in a debate. You might see, it might be whether in my times whether Sachin Tendulkar would have hit the shot like this or in other way. That was a big matter of debate, and people would almost go on war with each other. Probably war was justified on that issue. But in diplomacy, if you want to have a diplomacy, if you want to have successful negotiations, if you want to have a successful outcome of negotiations, then that doesn't work. In fact, at times that also has to be used because you don't want diplomacy. It's possible that you want to merely have a shroud of diplomacy, pretend to be discussing, but actually you don't want an outcome. You may want to be stubborn then. You may want to be obstructive then. But even if you want to be obstructive, your obstruction has to be a logical obstruction. I remember somebody from the WTO Secretariat was telling me that when the negotiations were going on for creation of the WTO for the Marrakesh Treaty, which is now the WTO Treaty, the Indian ambassador would stand there and say no to everything because India was opposed to the WTO structure. And what she told me was, his no had a lot of weight because we knew there's a huge population which is standing behind him. So even for obstructing negotiations, he had a certain weight in the negotiations. If it was a small country, inconsequential country, the objections would not have been taken into account. So when you stand, of course, you won't have that weight of population behind you. It's a model United Nations. But what you can have is the strength of the arguments. And if you look at the history of diplomacy, many small states have succeeded in many diplomatic negotiations simply by using their diplomatic skills. There's a very interesting book which is called Empires, written by Professor Cohen. And Professor Cohen speaks about how a declining empire perpetuates and elongates its influence around the world. Good example is United Kingdom. United Kingdom, although it won the Second World War, but lost all its colonies. From 1945 onwards, technically 1947 onwards, till 1965, it lost all its colonies. In the 60s, the debate in the United Kingdom was that United Kingdom is now in the business of packing up its grand empire because it had lost all its colonies. But does that mean its influence waned? It did not. Because it continued to have its influence through different mechanisms of diplomacy. The fact that their influence is still on us is the fact that I'm speaking to in English and not in any Indian language. So that's the way how empires perpetuate their influence around the world, and that perpetuation happens on the basis of diplomacy. Therefore, diplomacy is extremely critical. Diplomacy is the ability to understand what the other person wants. Apart from knowing what the other person wants, it is important to know why the other person wants. Often, some people are not very articulate. In some parts of the world, people are very passionate. So they're very passionate, but they don't make the point. So even if they're not making the point and they're passionate about the point, the sign of a good negotiator, good diplomat, is to understand what that other person has in his mind, although he's not using those words. You might say, is this some kind of a mind reading? Probably yes. We had Sanjay in Mahabharata who had a divya chakshu and he couldn't see and still he could speak about what was happening. You need some amount of third eye in diplomacy to understand what the other person has in his or her mind. And if you try to absorb that, then what you could do is you can find a solution, because diplomacy is about finding common ground. Negotiations is about finding common ground. You start negotiations at two opposite levels, but you start understanding the other person's point of view, what the other person wants, and then slowly arrive at a conclusion. Sign of a very advanced diplomat. There are very few of this. I have had a privilege of seeing such diplomats. When they go in a negotiating room, they know it very well what I want out of this meeting. So they know what I would want. That's the first thing. And the second is they know what I could achieve. So they start at a high pitch or may start at a lower pitch, doesn't matter. But try to get the negotiations at a point, critical point, where he can go home and say, well, this is what I was hoping to get out of this. If you get a little more, you are happier. You may not get the whole thing. During our discussions in the International Law Commission, when we all have to come on a compromise, there's often a point made. And there's a very wise member, he's quite old, very experienced. He was ambassador in India as well. And he always says, you know, a best compromise is the one with which everybody is unhappy. Because in diplomacy, there's no such situation as everybody is happy. Everybody is unhappy because everybody has to lose something. It's quite rare, but I do hope that in your negotiations, you come at a level where everybody is happy. You need to find an agreeable formula. And an agreeable formula needs a lot of thinking, a lot of innovation, an ability to think outside the box, to come up with new solutions, different solutions, which can be persuasive. You're basically persuading the other person. And to do that, you have to be intelligent. That's first obvious. You also need to be practical. If you can't bargain, say, the price of a banana in a shop, then probably you can't be a good negotiator. If you can buy a banana at a good price in the market, then be rest assured that you can succeed in negotiations. That's what, it's a very crude representation, but it's an easy analogy to understand. Therefore, language is the most critical thing. By language, I mean, what you convey, what you say, what you represent to the other person. But while doing so, when I mean by language here, of course, everything is in English. Today, English has become lingua franca of the world. Now, lingua franca is a French word, by the way. But because prior to America taking over the global diplomacy stage, prior to America became a superpower, in fact, before that, it had exceptionalism. It never engaged with international relations. It was a closed country. But it engaged with the world, influenced the world, and accordingly, the language influenced the world. Interestingly, prior to that, even when United Kingdom was the most influential country in the world, English was not the language of diplomacy. The language of diplomacy was French. It's because the language has certain fundamental characteristics which makes it easy to express yourself without expressing what you want to express. So that's a great skill that the language has. It also has precise words, but it also has words which can create confusion. It's also the way the language is delivered, the way the language is spoken. It's very elegant. But it's not the language of the world anymore. But why I gave that example is, as you chart out your futures further, which is not just in the model United Nations, but something else that you do in life, my sincere advice to all of you is learn one more language. Learn one more Indian language and learn one more foreign language. That's very important. Nowadays, everybody speaks in Hindi, so we know our local language, state language, we know our national language, which is good. But make an effort to learn one international language. Doesn't matter which one. It may be the most rare language you might learn, but you never know, 5 years down the line, somebody would be looking for somebody who knows Hawaiian, for example. And you might be the only person in India who knows that language. Learn any language. Learn Dutch, learn French, learn Spanish. Probably you don't know the largest world population speaks Mandarin, Chinese. There's Cantonese. You can learn one of them. I think the largest population is Spanish as well. Number 2 or number 1. I might get the numbers wrong. But Spanish-speaking population is huge. The whole of South America speaks Spanish, except for Brazil, which speaks Portuguese because it was a former Portuguese colony. You can, of course, if you know Portuguese, you know Portugal, and you can also go to Brazil. So it's very important for you in your long-term future growth that you need to you learn one more language. It will really help. It's a debate which has to happen within a structure of the rules, within a structure of procedures. Procedures are to facilitate the debate. So understand the essence of them, but don't get bogged down by it. Now, before I end, I want to make a last point. And the last point is, above anything else, whether you win a prize, don't win a prize, prizes are just a nice way to finish the function. Above anything else, enjoy the process. That's the most important thing. There's a very important element to that. I remember when I was running as a candidate for the International Law Commission and I had to meet several ambassadors, legal advisor, and other officials from different countries. And then I used to once in a while go back to speak to the then Foreign Minister, Madam Sushma Swaraj. And over the years, we developed a good rapport, good relationship. And at some stage, she told me, when I just came back from a campaign trip to New York, she asked me, Anirudh, all this is all right. What happened, how many people you met, all your record of, I think I met some 19 people in a span of one day. She said, has never happened in the UN premises, anybody doing so many meetings. She said, all that is fine. But tell me one thing, did you enjoy the process? That's more important. And I said, yes, I enjoyed it thoroughly, which gave me the energy to do 19 meetings in a day. My election officer had organized 21, but 2 people didn't turn up. From 8 a.m. till 6 p.m., I was sitting on one chair, concentrating, trying to tell people how I'm going to make the most important, pertinent contribution to the International Law Commission, and they should trust me. But that apart, it's when you enjoy the process, in the process when the goal is not just to win a prize, when the goal is to enjoy the process, you're not just going to have a great deal of inner satisfaction, you're going to learn a lot more things. So do learn from the format, do learn from others, and just enrich your personality. It's a huge opportunity to enrich your personality. You don't know when you will use the diplomacy, when you will use these negotiation skills that you use here. You might use them to resolve an international crisis, maybe some scary thing happening around the world with nuclear deals, or you might be using it simply to buy bananas, but at a good price. So you never know where you use it, where you might have to use it, but this is an opportunity to learn, make the most out of it. I wish you all the very best in these endeavors. I do hope you do very good for yourself, you do very good for the country, you do very good for the society you come from, and ultimately for the world, because according to us Indians, the world is not a place of interests. Of course, interests are important, but more than interests, for us, world is a family. It's Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Nobody calls the world a family. They call it friends. For us, the world is not a group of friends. We are a group of family. And therefore, as I said, you can change friends. You cannot change neighbors. You cannot change family members. So let's work with them to make it a happier family. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anirudh, for your very valuable address and also a very valuable advice to our students. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for providing us an insight towards the scope of international diplomacy and the importance of Model UN. Here at University Law College Model United Nations Conference, we also have a multilingual deliberation platform under the India at Sci-Fi Dialogues to promote the true essence of debate and discussion, sir. Thank you very much, sir. We believe that an opportunity to host a Model United Nations Conference would expand the learning horizons of participants by exchange of viable solutions and diverse viewpoints. We are indeed very happy to host you all for this second edition of University Law College Model United Nations 2021. Now, it is my proud privilege to render the vote of thanks. First and foremost, I would like to express my profound gratitude to our chief guest, Dr. Aniruddha Rajput, for being here with us today. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Dr. K.R. Venugopal sir for rendering the presidential address and gracing this event today. I also thank Professor Dr. Suresh V. Nadagowda, Honorable Principal and Chairman, University Law College, Bangalore University, Thank you, sir, for your guidance and standing as pillars of strength.
Thank you, Purnasri.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I now thank Professor Dr. V. Sudesh, former principal, University Law College, Bangalore University, for his moral support and assistance. I would like to thank Professor Dr. N. Dashrath, Dean, Faculty of Law, Bangalore University, for his support and guidance. I thank all our faculty members of University Law College, Dr. Satish Gowda N., Associate Professor, Dr. Jyoti Vishwanath, Associate Professor, and Dr. L. Chandrakanti, Associate Professor, for their constant support and encouragement in all our efforts. I would like to thank our distinguished visiting faculty of University Law College, Professor Ravi Verma Kumar, Senior Advocate, High Court of Karnataka, Shri Mohan V. Katarki, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India, Shri Uday Holla, Senior Advocate, High Court of Karnataka, former Advocate General of Karnataka, Shri Basava Prabhu S. Patil, Senior Advocate, High Court of Karnataka, Srimati Jaina Kotari, Senior Advocate, High Court of Karnataka. I would like to thank all the guest faculties, delegates, participants, and the member of the secretariats for joining us today for this ceremony. Thank you one and all. Thank you everyone for being part of this inaugural ceremony. I wish the best of luck for all the delegates. I request all the delegates of the committees and participants of India at 75 to stay back.
Thank you.